Hi, my name is Nick, and I hope you are doing well today. You can follow me at Narrowway Ministries on the socials and online at narrowwayministries.net. Last video, we talked about ancient Chinese history and what remarkable things we can learn about God, about the Bible, and about ourselves through that. Today, I want to continue that theme, but talk about the Christmas story. Of course, we're well and truly in the Christmas season right now, which is crazy that we're even at that point. This year has just flown by. But did you know that ancient China may have played a role in the Christmas story? For those of you who are familiar with the story around the birth of Jesus, we can read about them in Matthew and Luke. But in the book of Matthew, we read in chapter 2 the account of some wise men visiting Jesus. Let me read it to you first, and then we'll talk more about it. Matthew 2, beginning in verse 1. It says, Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they said, "for this is what the prophet wrote. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you, who will be the shepherd for my people Israel." Then Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Then he told them, "Go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child, and when you find him, come back and tell me so that I can go and worship him too." After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. Now, there's quite a few things in that text that we learn about the story of the birth of Jesus. One is there's this remarkable visit from these wise men from the east, somewhere east of Israel. And these wise men end up finding Jesus because they followed a star. Now, another word for wise men in the translation is magi. These people were astrologers. They studied the stars for God to reveal things to them. How do I know that God was revealing things to them? Well, it says in verse 12 that when it was time for them to leave, they returned home to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. So there was obviously a relationship with God. They were seeking God for information about what he has to reveal to them. On this occasion, it's about the Messiah. So they came from some distant country in the east, and all of Jerusalem was, it says, disturbed. They were blown away by what was happening, including King Herod, who was very jealous of what was happening. Now, what does this have to do with ancient China? Well, as I shared in the last video, which you can go back and watch if you haven't seen it, historical records indicate that the earliest Chinese people had a relationship with God. They worshipped what they called the one true creator God known as Shangdi, the same God that is mentioned in the Chinese Bibles today. They knew about a global flood that wiped out all of mankind, almost all of mankind. And they had this amazing relationship with God until almost 2,000 years later, when an emperor led a lot of the country into darkness and idolatry. However, there was still people who must have followed God, because in the records in ancient Chinese history, around the time of Jesus' birth, there was a chief Chinese astronomer, a magi, called Liu Zhang. I hope I pronounced that right. But he was also a high-ranking official in the imperial court in China. And this person mysteriously disappeared for over 2 years after he and his team discovered a unique star which they called the King Star. Now, where they lived was at the very end of the Silk Road, and of course the Silk Road went over to around where Israel is. And so at that time, a journey along the Silk Road from Shanzi, the region that they lived, to Judea would have taken 1 to 2 years. And as a high-ranking official, he would have most likely had the best horses and camels and numerous soldiers for protection. So you can imagine someone coming from as far away as China with all of these camels, with all of these soldiers, a big procession entering Jerusalem. You can see why King Herod and all the people of Jerusalem were disturbed and blown away by this. That's pretty amazing to think about, isn't it? The thought that perhaps ancient China played a role in the story of Jesus, that a magi, an astronomer, found a star thousands of miles away, traveled all the way to Judea, and gave these gifts to Jesus and then left again. That blows my mind. It just shows how incredible our God is. Okay, I want to go even further. This is going to blow your mind even more. About 13 months after the King Star appeared, a special comet appeared in the sky over China for 70 days during the time that they reckon might correlate with Jesus' birth in Jerusalem. And of course, the astronomers found this bright star that led them directly to Bethlehem, where Jesus was at the time. And, okay, this is even more amazing. 33 years later, in Chinese historical records, a total eclipse is detailed. Around the same time that Jesus died. Jesus was 33 years old when he died. And in the Gospels, it talks about how darkness fell on the land for 3 hours. Chinese history, 33 years after this event, records an eclipse that causes total darkness. Incredible. So as I was reflecting on this, I was just thinking about the fact that our God is amazing. He holds this whole world and this whole universe in his hands, and it just fills me with an even deeper sense of gratitude and appreciation and hope and excitement about what God is doing and what he is going to do in the world and in our lives, in spite of the craziness of this world that we live in. This season of Christmas, we can take hope in that. We can rest in that. We can be encouraged by the fact that he sent his son, and this son was all about saving mankind 2,000 years ago, but that message is still just as relevant today. In fact, now more than ever, our world needs the hope of that message. And so I just want to encourage you with that as we go about this Christmas season, that you can rest in the fact that God did all that he did. He sent his son, and that son has impacted the whole world and will continue to. And that's going to impact our lives for all eternity. So as you go about this Christmas season, as you deal with all the craziness of all the things that fill up our schedule this time of year, the stress of dealing with presents and family plans and traveling and just all of the things that come with it, may this encourage you that this is about Jesus, the one who was the King of all kings, who changed everything for this entire world. I hope that this encourages you today.